Okay. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me. My name is Jason Levine, Principal Worldwide Evangelist for Adobe Creative Cloud, and today we're going to be talking about what's new, what's coming to the next update of the Creative Cloud video and audio applications. And it's my great pleasure today to showcase to you some of the latest innovations across Premiere Pro, After Effects, Audition, and Character Animator. And if you'll be in town for the IBC convention, which is coming up in the next few days, you'll get to see these features live in person. So as always, lots of stuff to cover today, lots of new innovations and cool things to show you. So I'm going to dive right in, and we're going to start in Premiere and talk a little bit about color. And I'm going to be switching my workspaces quite a bit. So here, let me go ahead and switch my screen over here. So I'm going to stay out of the way for a change, and just we're just going to kind of get rolling here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about, a whole new series of curves with a new feature called selective color grading. So what we've done now, we've added 5 new hue, saturation, and Luma curves in the curves section, which you can see right up here, that effectively are just going to make your lives a lot easier. This also, in fact, replaces the previous color wheel, which was sort of hue over saturation that you'll recall before. It's laid out in a more horizontal fashion, which is what many of you are sort of used to seeing in other grading apps. And you can see there's 5 new curves in total: hue versus saturation, hue versus hue, hue versus Luma, Luma versus saturation, and saturation versus saturation. I'm going to cover pretty much all of these today and just kind of show you how quickly they work. Now, before we get there, we're constantly updating and improving the Lumetri color panel. And this is something that a lot of users have been asking for and requesting, which is the ability to effectively stack multiple versions of Lumetri right inside the panel. This is something that we've really stressed. This is something that we've been hearing a lot, and people really wanted this feature. So if you look up at the top here, so I'm going to go back to my screen there, you'll see if I zoom in up here that right now I'm on a layer called Alexa LUT. The reason for that is that this particular footage does in fact have an input LUT applied to it. You'll notice now, but this is a flyout menu. So if I click on this little drop down, we have another layer of the Lumetri panel coexisting as well. We also have the ability to add another one, any number of them, and rename them. So let's go to this one called hue versus sat, and we'll rename this and call this selective grading, like this. Now, as you might expect, each of these has independent controls, so you can flop between them. I can disable one while continuing to work on the other. All right, so if we were to do something on this one, say like just add some warmth here, again, I could now turn this off, go back to the Alexa one, turn that back on, back to selective grading, enable this. You get the idea. The point here being that I no longer have to go to the effects controls and do that switching on, switching off, which you were used to in the past. This just was sort of very inelegant, right? And now all of this can be done very easily, very quickly, effectively, directly from inside the Lumetri color panel. So great feature here. Really excited to bring this into the latest version of Premiere. Okay, so that's basically, and again, think of it this way, you're stacking layers of Lumetri. You're going to find a lot of speed and performance enhancements as well. Of course, you were able to do this before, but perhaps at the expense of a little bit of performance. You're going to find that the performance of stacking multiple layers of Lumetri now is much smoother, much faster, and just generally easier to work with. Okay, so the first clip we're going to start working on here involves using the hue versus saturation curve. And what's really wonderful about these is that you're going to find that, again, it works. If you're used to grading, it works in a sort of familiar way. If you're brand new to this, this is really going to inspire you to kind of dive deeper into color grading and color correction. And it's very easy and intuitive to use. So one of the first things I want to do with this shot here, all the footage that you'll be seeing today was provided to us by a company called Sibelsalz out of Stuttgart, Germany. So we're very thankful to have their content showcased here at IBC. And we want to just sort of do a very basic warm-up of her skin tones. So I can come over to the hue saturation curve area here. You'll notice that there's the familiar Adobe eyedropper on each of these little modules. I can take my eyedropper. Let's just kind of find a neutral skin point right here. And when I click on her face down inside our curve, it gives us 3 control points, okay? With the center being kind of that main focal point of where we made our selection. Now, you've got a couple of different sort of keyboard shortcut options here, but this is where it starts to get really cool. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, which is going to constrain this particular hue. And as I go up, you'll notice that now I'm increasing the skin tones based on that very specific hue. And if I go south of the line here, we are now desaturating, right? So north, saturation, south, desaturation. You may also notice here that the visual itself, if you take a look at the actual line here, you can see that it's showing you as you go above the line, it's more saturated, and as you go below the line, it's desaturated, okay? I'm no longer holding Shift, so now I can move this around. Again, you can widen the range, you can add additional control points. This is unbelievably easy and flexible and elegant and beautiful. And you may have also noticed that we have this little preview bar here. So traditionally, again, when you're working on skin tones, one of the problems is you usually end up in a situation like this, where because the reds are sort of crossing the edges of the graph, you get into this sort of situation, and we really wanted to eliminate that. Well, this is, again, one of those brilliant things that our engineers have done. You can now slide those reds, those skin tones, right into center view here, just so that you can get a little bit more accurate, a little bit faster, with a little bit more elegance, all right? Now, similarly, you can do multiple points on this same curve. So I'm going to take our eyedropper again. Let's go up and maybe just accentuate some of the blues in the sky here. Once again, you can see the selection that it's made. I'm going to hold down my Shift key again to constrain that particular hue. And I'm just going to increase those ever so slightly just to punch it up here a little bit. All right, again, being mindful of my scopes. Really wonderful, really easy. Again, I can widen the range here a little bit more. I can add additional control points. If I want to get rid of all my points, I can simply double click on one of these. It'll flatten the graph out very easily. I can enable or disable this particular hue versus sat module while inside of our selective grading Lumetri effect here. We all, of course, have our global bypass to turn off everything that we've done. So just a really beautiful, easy, elegant way to do saturation for a particular hue. Let's go ahead and skip over to hue versus hue, all right? Now, again, as someone who is new or beginning with color, what I love about this is you can really start to understand how all of these different curves and modules work. In the case of this particular clip, you'll notice as we move through the shot here, okay, so we've revealed some of these other girls with this kind of magenta-y, pinkish shirt. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be kind of cool to have all of the dresses the same color? So I need to effectively change the hue of those specific dresses. So once again, I'm going to take our eyedropper. I'm going to select the existing color of the dress. And again, down here in the graph, you can see our center point brilliantly laid out right there. Okay, there it is. We can see what we want. Now, I'm going to hold down the Shift key again. But now when I click on this, look at what it now is showing me. Now I can see the different hues that I'll be moving to. So again, if I go below our line, we're going to move towards the oranges, yellows, greens. If I go north now, I can find that exact hue matching against the other girl's clothing. Something like this, right there. Go ahead and play it back, and it just plays back beautifully, wonderfully. So cool. Before, after. Simple. Hue versus hue, right? Adjusting the hue of an existing hue. Hue versus sat, adjusting the saturation of a particular hue. Move ahead. All right, hue versus luma. So again, this is now allowing us to adjust the luminance of the blue of the sky and actually kind of darken them a bit to create a little bit more, drama in the sky and a little bit more contrast against the people riding the horses here. So you can see I've already got it selected here. Again, my control point, if I hold this down, you can see very clearly we're looking at the sky. And once again, I just love the way this is laid out because it's showing you exactly what would be happening here. If we want to brighten, again, increase the luminance, right? You can see what's happening there, but we actually want to darken those blues. And you can see just how lovely it looks there in the reflection in the water. Now, you don't want to go too far here on this footage. Obviously, it's going to start to break down a little bit. So maybe something right about there. Again, before, after, something like that. You can even see that I've got a Luma versus sat as well here. And you can see that's very subtle, but if you look on the scopes, you can see it's making a subtle adjustment there. Again, the nice thing about these is that you can use multiple versions of these curves together. Or again, you can use them individually, and you can have multiple layers that only contain, each layer could have a hue versus hue or a hue versus Luma by itself. It's entirely up to you. All right, here's another example where we've got some hue versus Luma, trying to just add a little more drama to darken that sky and make it look a bit more like a sunset happening there. Okay, really nice, really easy. All right, one more quick example here, a little bit of Luma versus Sat. So in this case, we're using, let's kind of twirl up here. And you can see that we've done a little work here with the RGB curves just to get a little bit of detail back in the sky. Here was our original. Again, we're really sort of blown out here. We could also probably go into our basic corrections, maybe drop down a little bit of the highlights here. But in conjunction with the new curves, specifically Luma versus Sat, you can see that we're just kind of warming up some of the brighter areas here and just adding back a little more saturation there to bring those kind of morning warm tones into the scene. Really simply, really easily. All right. Here, similar thing. We're adding a little bit of saturation to an otherwise blown out sky. All right. And again, if I take this control point and bring it down, you can see the opposite effect, right? Desaturating those brighter areas, saturating those brighter areas. Right? Really nicely, really simply. And as you start playing through this stuff and working with these curves, it all starts to really click. All the things that, what I was attempting to do with the color wheel before now make a lot more sense with Luma versus Sat. So this is super, super cool. Now the last one here, and this is a fairly decent example for this, but is Sat versus Sat. Now there's lots of different ways that you can use this one. Our very own Patrick Palmer was explaining to me. It's basically a lot like vibrance, where on the left side you have no saturation here. On the right side you have more saturation, and in this case we're kind of pushing it down. If we were to raise this up a bit, just adding a little, and it's very, very subtle. You can see a very subtle change on our scopes here, but this is kind of like a subtle vibrance control. You can see a little bit changing on screen here. Personally, I haven't used this one quite as much, but you get the idea. So those are the new curves inside of the curves section of Lumetri. It's also worth pointing out, since we're on the stream here, people ask, well, what if you have projects that were using the previous the existing hue saturation wheel? What happens to those? Well, the cool thing is it's backwards compatible. So it will translate the previous color wheel into this new hue versus Sat curve. So anything that you've done there will appear here. All right. So let's go ahead. We're going to switch gears a little bit here. Let's check back and go into a new sequence and talk a little bit about motion graphics templates, and specifically something that we introduced in the April update to After Effects called data-driven graphics. I'm going to switch back to the camera here for a second. So if you remember back in April at our NAB launch, we added something called data-driven graphics, which allowed you to take actually, this may have even been added before that, now that I'm thinking about it. We made some new additions to data-driven graphics where you can bring in CSV or TSV files into After Effects with all of your data, and it will automatically animate based on the data in that CSV file. And a lot of people were saying, well, as editors, a lot of times we're working with things like lower thirds or different types of graphics that really could be fed spreadsheet-style data. In the case of lower thirds, here's all the people that we'll use in an episode or whatever, and we would just like to be able to quickly swap those out without having to modify text and things manually, misspelling names, etc. So this was a case where, once again, we wanted to bring some of the innovation from After Effects into the Premiere world, and we have now done that via data-driven graphics and the ability to instantly update spreadsheet data right inside of the Essential Graphics panel. So here we have, again, another piece from Silver Salts here. I'm just going to readjust my view so I can see some of this a little bit better. Now, this is a motion graphics template. It is an After Effects-based motion graphics templates. So as you know, we've got the After Effects playback engine here now in Premiere Pro. And as I scrub through this, it will begin caching those frames, which will bring us to real-time playback, right? So with the After Effects ones, because you've just got a lot more animation, a lot more complexity potentially, it doesn't take long though. Again, you're going to find in this release so many performance enhancements, so much stuff happening here, all right? So again, wind this back. We're pretty much in full real time here. And you can see we've got this kind of cool animated graphic with some statistics, you know, recurring dreams. 83% of women have recurring dreams, 44% of men, whatever the case. Okay. And then inside the Essential Graphics panel here, we have a couple of things that we can modify. We have the angle adjust values for the two different graphics here. But then we have this spreadsheet option here. What's that? Okay, well, let's go into Edit Spreadsheet Data. So here, this is now where you actually can feed a CSV file, again, based on how this was authored in After Effects, to change the data. I'm going to click on Browse, and here I've got some data-driven graphics. Let's go ahead and grab number 2 here. Open this. And now you can see that it's got entirely new values, including different color values, again, different text values, and it updates instantly. All right. Now, as I was mentioning before, now because this is being driven by this spreadsheet, I can't simply click inside these fields. However, I can override them by going to this unmapped option, and then I can modify the text here. Theoretically, if you've got all the data contained in your CSV, you wouldn't necessarily have to do that. Now, people are, of course, going to ask, oh, so what are they doing here? Why do they have the colors and hex values? Well, this is, again, one of those things where if you work in Photoshop a lot, it'll give you, in the color picker, it'll give you those hex values. That's just how this particular motion graphics artist authored this. Remember that you can still use and drag in the color controls when you're authoring this motion graphics template in After Effects and just add the color picker as an editable option versus, you know, I don't know hex code, so I could change this to 20 or something and see what happens. Point being, you have full editability capabilities here. Again, we can switch this to another one, something like this, change the data once again. You can see this one is waking dreams, all right? And just as with before, you know, every time we change that, just a quick scrub through to cache those frames to get us back into real time. I'm also in full quality here, as you'll notice, which is a testament to this new release playing back so much more smoothly, even with After Effects driven motion graphics templates in the timeline. So really cool, really simple. But that was kind of a very small amount of data. What about something like I mentioned before, where we have you know, multiple lower thirds that have lots of different elements that we're going to reuse over and over again? Okay, well, here now is where this gets really, really cool. There have been a lot of additions to motion graphics authoring in this latest release in After Effects. Grouping, new text and font options, which we're going to get to in detail when I get to After Effects here. But once again, kind of showcasing to you some of the really cool stuff that you can do with this data-driven concept and using CSV or TSV files. First and foremost, inside the Essential Graphics panel here. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is that based on how this was authored, we have this spreadsheet row slider. So this is, again, this is nothing new in terms of how these work, but as you may have guessed, this allows you to very instantly change the titles and the color scheme for the lower third based on the data in this CSV file. And you'll notice that, again, scrubbing through these now, a lot faster than it was before, okay? You'll also notice now that we have text controls. Yes, and more importantly, text properties. Yes, now we're not going to go into all of this here, but as you can imagine, let's twirl this down. Now, when it's authored in After Effects, if the author wants to give you the option to modify font and style and another property, which I'll show you momentarily, you can do that here. You can sort by your Adobe font, your Typekit fonts, your favorites, etc. More control. These are the things you've asked him for. Also notice that we have these little twirl downs because we'll be able to create groups as well. So a lot more flexibility here. But here's how cool this gets. So let's kind of go into our spreadsheet data here. And this time, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to browse, and we're going to open up this one here, Dreamer Lower Thirds 2, right, which should have some different names. Okay, Elliot Koppel. Okay, that's not who this is. So once again, you've already seen how we can edit this inside of the spreadsheet data panel right here. Also, just to point out, you notice that it also says you can drop the spreadsheet right here. So if you do want to just drag and drop from the desktop or from a drive and, you know, change focus, whatever, that also works. Let's go and click OK on this. And let's see. Okay, so Rosa Matis, researcher. Okay, very cool. All right. Well, here's the thing. Because this is tied to a CSV file, it's actually reading that data live. And one of the things that when we've been talking to people who wanted to use this sort of feature, they're asking, well, what if the file lives on a server? Well, here's the thing. It's a live file that's actually feeding these titles. So I have this CSV open in Excel right now. You can see it right here. So there's Rosa Matis, researcher. Okay, so let's change this from researcher to musician, because I believe there's a moment somewhere in this film where she's actually playing on a keyboard here. All right, so I'm going to change the CSV file. Now you can imagine this file could be living on a server somewhere, and I've just made a change to it. I'm going to quickly save my change. Now check this out. When I click back to Premiere, it's already changed. Crazy. So the CSV is actually live, and that data can be edited live. So here's a little thing. If you're going to be working with these files off of a network and people are effectively editing your CSVs, you could see things changing before your eyes and not understand why. So a little best practice there would just be to lock that Excel file so that doesn't happen. Let's just go back to the original version here. We'll save it so I can continue on. It updates again, and we're good to go. All right. But just kind of showcasing to you the power and flexibility of leveraging now data-driven graphics inside Premiere Pro. And it's worth pointing out that the CSV is actually in the project. So this will get saved along with the project file, which is also just super cool. So let's move on. We've got just a couple more things to show you here. Lastly, so I'm going to go into this sequence and let's switch over to our audio workspace. What have we got in here? Okay. Very cool. Let's twirl this up so we can see our faders. All right. For some time now, we've been talking about the Essential Sound panel. I'll switch back to my camera for a moment. And the brilliance with Essential Sound is that it allows the non-audio professional the ability to mix dialogue and music, sound effects and ambience very effectively using all the same professional filters, tools, and DSP that a sound mixer would use, but with very simple, accessible, in many cases, singular controls, a single slider, a single checkbox, whatever it is. And we have a lot of options when it comes to repair and restoration. But in the previous release of Premiere, we had some adaptive noise reduction that in some cases worked really, really well, really brilliantly, and in others, not so much. And we heard that from you. In fact, we heard a lot of that via user voice. Well, we wanted to make that better for you. And in this next release coming soon, we now have a brand new adaptive noise reduction effect, process, algorithm, which is going to much more cleanly, transparently denoise your files using Essential Sound. Now I'm just going to quickly show this to you in Premiere. We're going to cover a little bit more of the details of it when we get over to Audition, but just to show you real quickly. So let me bounce back to my desktop here. And let's go ahead and first just take a listen to this. I'm going to skip ahead a little to some of the other parts of the video, and let's take a quick listen here.
You're going to have to itch to fail.
Put on my headphones.
And then start from scratch. If you're going to take advice, make sure you remember how to dance, because the beat of your own drum is all you got in the end.
Okay. Love this dude's voice. All right. So, as with before, first thing we're going to do to leverage Essential Sound is we're going to tag this particular clip as dialogue. And just as before, when we do that, it then presents to us common effects and filters used for processing dialogue. Here in Repair, we now, again, have the same reduce noise. This is in the same location. There's just a new effect under the hood. So if we go ahead and turn this on, again, for those of you not familiar with what's happening here, it's actually applying at the clip level this new noise reduction filter which is going to very transparently and very clean, in a very clean way, reduce that noise. So let's go ahead and play this back, and I'll start adjusting the slider, and you'll hear how it's beginning to take that noise out.
And then start from scratch. If you're gonna take advice, make sure you remember how to dance, because the beat of your own drum is all you got in the end. You gotta be okay with the cold and ready to strike when the iron's hot. You have to work between a rock and a smart place, because if you're gonna follow your dream, you gotta go where it takes you.
All right, new filter, new algorithm, new effect, cleaner, and you'll notice I'm not using very much here. In fact, I found that you can actually use less noise reduction now and still get very nice, clean, effective results, okay? So we're super cool, super proud to have that in the latest version of Premiere. Also worth pointing out, I'm going to show this to you on the Audition side, but I'm just going to point out that it's here in Premiere as well. Reduce reverb. Yes. Okay, one more last quick thing to show you, almost forgot, is more immersive capabilities in this latest version of Premiere Pro. So let's skip back to the desktop once again and talk about the addition of VR 180 stereoscopic content. Yes, you knew it was coming, you knew you'd likely see it, and sure enough, we now will be offering this in the next update to Premiere Pro CC. So down here in the project panel, I've got a couple of clips that I just shot here in my backyard, actually. And if we go into our properties, where are my properties here? Properties, thank you. Scroll all the way to the bottom here, you can see that it is, of course, auto-detecting that this is stereoscopic side by side, 180 by 180. So by nature, VR 180 is stereoscopic. This particular content was shot with a Zcam Pro. Also contains ambisonic audio, which I captured with my Zoom H2n, which you can see the adaptive 4-channel ambisonic clip down here in the timeline. So just as with 360 VR, we have all of our auto detect features. Now again, because this works natively, or the default state for VR 180 is stereoscopic, when I go ahead and turn on my VR video display, you can see that I'm currently in anaglyph mode. So when I kind of scrub through this here, oh, and I've also got a proxy attached to this. Why do I have a proxy attached to this, you ask? Well, you probably didn't notice that, but this was shot at 6K at 60 frames per second. So yeah, so pretty heavy load there. So in this case, let me go ahead and turn on my proxy. Now I get really nice, beautiful scrubbiness, okay? And you'll also notice if we go into our flyout menu here, this is where inside of my settings, for my stereoscopic view, you can see I'm in anaglyph mode. Now, of course, you don't have to edit in anaglyph mode. I could switch into left or right, and then you get your regular view as expected, and you can move around your 180 sphere, okay? But if you're trying to see, or perhaps you're in a headset, again, you're using the immersive environment option here, or you have a pair of the blue and red glasses, this is going to allow you to cut this in a, oh, didn't I make a specific workspace for this? Oh, I thought I did. Sorry, I had a much more elegant looking, like full screen view for this. But this just kind of gives you an idea of, you know, how this all works. Again, this is just me messing about in my backyard here. What's cool though is you can see that I've even got some text that I've parented to the wall here. Now what you'll also find with this VR 180 support, if we go into our effects over here, is you're going to see some of our VR effects modified as well. So we just type VR. Let's go ahead and move this panel up here. And let's go into something like our, well actually I think we've got plane to sphere already applied to this text. Again, by the way, we could see what that looks like outside of the viewer. It's very, very tiny here. All right, gonna bring this back into view. Go into our effects controls under plane to sphere, and you're just gonna see a couple of new options in here. First and foremost, auto VR properties, new checkbox there. You've got your stereo disparity as well. And you can use this not only on the text, in fact, here, let's go ahead and disable this. But if I grab, let me grab our effect here, And I want to grab the VR projection effect and apply that to the master clip here. Go over to effects controls. Oh, I actually already had it applied. My bad. One of the things that you'll see, you got a couple options here. Again, stretch to fill, auto input auto VR properties, output auto VR properties. So again, you can uncheck those and then choose how they need to be displayed. You've got options here, but because it's using the auto detect, it does a pretty good job. This is again where you can adjust sort of your stereo width of your content here. Wow, so if you're in glasses right now, it's gonna make you go crazy, or barf, one or the other. Just more flexibility, more control. It effectively functions the same way. In fact, that's kind of one of the brilliant things about this, is that if you've been working with 360 content, nothing really changes. The grading process, everything sort of works the same here, except you just have some new capabilities and new ways to create and author content, which of course can be shown in headsets and on YouTube and elsewhere. And we're seeing a lot of adoption of VR 180, so really excited to be able to bring this content to the next version of Premiere Pro. So lots of new things in this next version. VR 180 support. We talked about data-driven graphics, motion graphics templates, new denoiser and DeReverb, and then again all of these selective grading, color grading tools: hue versus hue, hue versus sat, hue versus Luma, Luma versus sat, sat versus sat. Such great stuff, and stackable layer-like Lumetri layers inside the Lumetri color panel. So great stuff coming to the next edition of Premiere. All right, so we're going to shift gears now and switch over to After Effects and talk about some of the things we're doing there. So let me just go ahead and switch my screen and we'll get started. All right, so here we are in After Effects, and the first thing we're going to talk about is something called depth passes or depth mats, which can now be created for native 3D, stuff that you're actually building 3D in After Effects directly. Now, you may have noticed in the past, if we were to go up to our effects menu here under 3D channel, we had all of these 3D channel effects. And the truth is that while we had them before, they really only worked with 3D that was created outside of After Effects in another app entirely. There were really specific parameters to make them work, and they just weren't leveraged as much as they potentially should have, because it wasn't stuff that you could have done natively directly in After Effects. Well, we've now generalized these effects and made them work with our classic 3D and the newer Cinema 4D renderers. So if we take a look here, let's go ahead and play back this little piece of video that we have in this comp. We wanted to enhance this clip by basically tracking the camera and adding some 3D motion graphical elements and effects. And with our new depth mats, we can access the 3D data in a native object and apply those 3D channel effects that I was just showing you. And all that's effectively required once you have your creation here is to pre-compose it. Once you pre-compose, that's all you need to get started with these 3D tools. And if there's any depth in the comp itself, After Effects is going to recognize it automatically and create that depth channel for you. So this is the graphic in question that was created by one of our amazing demo artists, Mark Wallachuk here. And again, what I did here was I took this, and this is again leveraging the classic 3D engine, pre-composed this, and brought it into this particular comp here. Now I'm going to go into our effects controls for a moment, and let's just solo this. And quickly, first, let me turn off everything here and turn on the 3D channel extract. Okay, so here is, this is the actual depth channel that's created. And again, this happens once you pre-compose. In this case, the darker, the further it is away from the camera, the brighter, the closer it is to the camera. And you can see that very easily here with this 3D channel effect. Okay. And then what I started to do with this was to add different 3D effects on top of it to kind of work alongside the background elements. So we added a little fog 3D, and under there we changed the fog color to kind of blend in, again, a little bit more elegantly with the background. We then added the depth of field effect, right? So we can see this is fully in focus right now. Obviously, it's further away. That should be a little bit blurry. So we made some changes there. And again, all of those parameters, as always, fully editable, keyframeable. And then what we did here was using a combination of two different depth mat effects, basically created that sort of fall off as this appears, as these audio waves appear on screen. So if we go ahead and play this back now, effectively building basically like a wipe across the footage. And again, that kind of works in conjunction with that depth of field effect to really match the background plate. Super cool, super easy, and again, all done natively. And this is leveraging the classic 3D renderer. Well, what about using something with the Cinema 4D renderer? So we took this a step further and created some 3D extruded text. Again, you know it is because these are one of the things that you can do specifically with that Cinema 4D render engine. So once again, we pre-composed this, brought it into this comp, and you can see here, pre-composed, up here we've got our 3D channel effect. So you can see, again, darker, further away, brighter, closer to the camera. Same thing here. We've let's go ahead and turn this off. All right. Add a little bit of depth of field to kind of blur out the pieces that are further away from the camera. Add a little bit of hue saturation to kind of, again, flow with the look of the overall scene. And if we just kind of scrub through this now, I'm not going to bother pre-rendering the whole thing. A lot of stuff going on here. Again, this is using that Cinema 4D renderer. But now, even by the way, this is significantly faster than it was even before, too. Now we've created something really dramatic and dynamic, and all right inside of After Effects. We didn't have to go outside of After Effects to build this beautiful 3D with these auto-generated depth mats very, very quickly. And honestly, this is something which I never would have attempted before, and now feel actually somewhat comfortable to be able to try and create myself in After Effects. So really, really cool to have these new depth mats available to you in the latest next version of After Effects. Okay, so let's skip ahead here, and we're going to bounce very quickly into a new comp and talk about the Puppet tool. Just twirl down a couple of my layers here, and you can see all the various points that we have on here. And again, with some of our new sculpting tools, we're effectively going to let you mold your layers into really dynamic shapes with new pins that twist and bend and scale in just really elegant new ways. All right. So first, let's come over here, and we're gonna focus on this original puppet pin down here. All right. So in this case, this is a classic pin, and if we just kind of pick this up and move it, as you'd expect, here's kind of what happens. Again, now this is using the new engine, so you can see it has a little bit more organic, lovely movement here. But in and of itself, nothing particularly special. And I'm actually just going to create a little bit of an animation here, kind of let him do a bit of a dance. You'll see why in a moment as we're kind of going through this. All right, you can see my amazing animation skills. Okay, a little bit of a dancing praying mantis there. Okay, but now we're going to actually add some new pins. So if we come up to the top here to the Puppet Pin tool, you'll now see that you have two new pins in the list, Bend tool and Advanced Pin tool. So let's go ahead and choose the Advanced Pin tool. All right, there we go. That's changed. Come back over here, and we're going to place one of these advanced pins right on its head. All right. So now you can see you've got a whole new series of controls. So first of all, here, let's move this ahead a little bit into my animation. If we click and drag on this, we can change the scale like that. You can scale it up a little bit, like he's getting in your face. You scale it down. Okay. Little scaling there. If we select the circle here, we can rotate. All right, so again, I'm just kind of creating this little simple dancey animation with his legs. Maybe I'll do a nice quick movement here, and you can just see how wonderful and organic this is. And then if we select, let's just click around the pin here, we can just move it, all right? Like that. And you can see that the other pins really sort of react very nicely to that as well. Just creating a little bit of some movement and some organic animation here. Now those are advanced pins, okay? But as mentioned, we also have the bend pins. So now that we've created our little animation with the advanced pins, let's go ahead and grab the bend pin tool. And we're going to place that on his arm, in the middle of his arm here. Again, this one's going to give us some position and scale options. So once again, if we want to scale this up, I heard my colleague Victoria say this, we can go big arm, tiny arm, big arm, tiny arm. So maybe we'll have him start with sort of tiny arm, gradually get bigger as it's dancing, and then shrink back down again. Something like that. Looks about the size that it should be. And then scale as well. And you can see how by doing this, I mean, all the other pins kind of go along for the ride as well. So you're kind of getting this, again, just very natural looking, smooth and organic motion with this little simple animation that we're doing here. All right? Just like that. And of course, we could add some wiggle to these pins. We could do all different types of things to these pins. It's just the idea that with a few pins for basic motion control, and then you can use additional ones to really dial in precise positioning or sort of custom secondary animations. So if we take a look kind of at this little finished version of this here, I'm just going to quickly pre-render this. You can see I've got our animation here. Of course, all of our existing compositing tools still work with the puppet pin creations. So here we've got our praying mantis via a blend mode on a wall, and you can see all that nice organic animation that I just did. And there you have it. I mean, you know, not like I'm going to quit anytime soon and go work for Cartoon Network, but I think you get the idea. And the motion just looks so fluid and so nice, and just, gosh, it's very inspiring to want to create and animate things. Again, if you think about the way the previous puppet tool before the advanced engine worked, this is pretty significantly different, right? And just looks so much better. So cool now to have the advanced pins and the bend pins with our new puppet tool. Okay, so now we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about some motion graphics templates. But specifically, what's sort of cool about this is, and we talked about this quite a bit. And here, let me see. I think I just go to this workspace here. As I mentioned earlier, we've always got features that we bring into, say, Premiere, which we then hear from people, oh, you know, or we've got something in After Effects and we'd love you to bring that into Premiere. Well, in this case, there were some things that Premiere was doing with motion graphics templates that users were requesting functionality for in After Effects, specifically around the concept of responsive design time, right? The idea there being that, and here I'll just turn the camera back on for a second, that if you're building a motion graphics template, you might have certain elements, again, as a reusable template. Lower third is a good example, where, for instance, it animates on, and then there's something that happens, and then it animates off. And you always want the animate on and the animate off to be the same duration. You never want that to change. But you might want to change how long that lower third, or whatever, appears on screen, right? So in Premiere, we have responsive design position and responsive design time, which allows you to really lock specific regions of animation in time, and then you can stretch out the MOGRT, motion graphics template, for any duration, and those regions remain protected. Well, we've now taken that concept and will allow you to create responsive design time motion graphics templates in After Effects as well. So I'm going to show you that now. Let's get out of here, bring this back so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so here we are inside of Essential Graphics, and I'm currently looking at my responsive design #1 comp, which you see on the screen here, that has this kind of cool little lower third graphic with some text and things, all right? Now again, nothing new here. We've got our solo supported properties button, and what that's going to allow us to do is it's going to show us inside of the comp all of the various parameters that can be added and virtually made editable to the Premiere editor once they're using this motion graphics template in Premiere. And again, there's other things which we added in the last release that give you flexibility for using Essential Graphics as well. By the way, remember in the previous CSV files how we had color values? Like I said, here's where if you just want to be able to change color elements of the graphic, we don't have to do it in hex values. You can just use the classic color fill options here and drag those, into the panel if need be, all right? But first, before we get to the responsive part, this is the really exciting thing that I wanted to show you, which is based around text, okay? So we're going to grab this first line of source text. All right, and you can see it says chase the clouds here, and I would normally give this some kind of an edit here, telling it what it is. And here, we'll grab the other line of text as well. We're going to bring both of those in there just to kind of show you this new feature, because this is probably the most requested thing that we heard from users when authoring motion graphics templates in After Effects is we want the Premiere editor to be able to modify font and style. And now you will have the option to do that. So when you bring in source text into Essential Graphics, if you click on Edit Properties, now you have this new dialog that gives you 3 options. You can enable custom font selection for the editor, for the user. So you make a template, you choose Helvetica, or you choose Fat Frank or Futura PT, whatever, but you want the user to be able to change that font. You can enable that. They will now have a control for that inside of the motion graphics template. If you want them to be able to adjust font size, same thing right here. And enable things like faux styles, available on many of the fonts that we have. Enable faux styles. Click OK. So when you do that, just as you saw before in Premiere, this is now the display that the editor will have when using this motion graphics template inside of Premiere. Again, same font menu. You can filter by your Adobe fonts, your Typekit fonts. You can filter by favorites. So cool. You've got all of the various styles available to you for that particular font. And then the faux italic, faux bold, etc. Now, as you may have noticed before, we had these little sections or groups, effectively, of different things. So, like, this is our text group. I should have done this. I should have done this first. That's okay. We can make another one. Under here, towards the bottom, you'll now see a little drop down: Add Formatting, Add Comment, which we had before, right? So we could add a comment. You could say, these are all about type, whatever. And then we can say, add a group, right? The funny thing is, as we started to see more and more motion graphics templates coming from After Effects, they started to get really complex. So without grouping, you were left with just lots and lots of scrolling inside the template just to access all the various features. Commenting was nice to separate them, but we needed more control. So now you can do that very easily simply by dragging things into the group, which you can see I'm doing right here. And now when I close the group, it hides them. Open the group, there they are, right? I believe we can just pull it outside of the group as well. So now we've only got 2 inside the group, 1 outside, again, something like that. I can take the source, all of our text, and drag that in there. Okay, really easily. I can change this to text props, rename the group. It just kind of works the way you'd expect. Really nice, really simple, and so on and so forth. But let's talk about responsive design. So again, responsive design time. So in the case of this animation, Chase the Clouds, Civil wanted to be able to display this on videos, and they always wanted the sort of fly-on animation of Chase the Clouds, capture the invisible, and then the fade out of everything. They want those timings preserved. And you'll notice that we have these new shaded sections, these new marker types in here that are going to allow us to do just that. Oh, sorry, I wanted to grab my portion bar. So here's the easiest way to create what we effectively call these protected regions. Move this one back over here. All right. So with this selection made, I'm going to right-click on my work area, and I'm going to choose Create Protected Region from Work Area. All right, just like that. Select this now, and now what you see is you get this new sort of marker selection. I can double-click on that. We can put a comment in here, call this End Animation. All right, and we can give it a different label color if we so want. Notice that you now have this checkbox, Responsive Design Time, Protected Region. All right, super, super cool, really easy. And you have to realize any sort of arbitrary range can be frozen to create a protected range of time. It works effectively just as it does in Premiere Pro. So now when I go to this other video that we want to lay this over top of, okay, let's go ahead and nest that comp where we just added those 3 protected regions. And you can actually see that it comes in here with those highlighted sections, very much like Premiere's. You can even see, it's funny, this is my text label here is going over the edge. It's still the same duration, right? It's just, that's funny. I didn't realize it did that yesterday. Okay, so when we play this back, again, you can see there's the animation, happens in that amount of time, happens in that amount of time. And again, the outro, same thing. It'll happen in this amount of time. But we want to extend this. We actually want this to last this long. Notice those regions, the animation that exists in those regions does not change. So this is something that requires a little bit of explanation if you're not familiar with how this works in Premiere. What happens is any keyframed animation that exists in these protected blue marked areas will never change. It'll always be the same duration. And if there's any animation that exists in between those ranges, it will get squeezed or expanded or stretched out accordingly, right? So at the moment, there's really nothing else happening in there, but the idea is that the intro animation, the middle where it flies on that second layer of text happens at the exact same amount of time with our little waveforms, and then it animates off in the same amount of time. Let's go ahead and squish this down. Notice it never changes, right? Those protected regions stay the same. We're squeezing everything in between them in those beige areas there, but those animations remain the same. So if we wind back again, flies on, same duration. It's got to recache those frames. Again, that flies on with the same duration, and then it's going to fade out, fly off with the same duration. So responsive design, motion graphics templates, now easily created and accessible in this latest version coming soon to After Effects. Okay, so speaking of expressions, just real quickly, wanted to point out that there is a new expressions engine. And one of the first things that you'll probably notice is that they are now monospace type. So they look different, which is also really cool. The funny thing is that the expression engine that we've been using, the legacy one, that's from 1999. So a lot has actually changed since 99. So again, here's where you can change those settings very, very simply, very, very easily, right inside of After Effects. Super nice. Now you may have noticed when I bounced into this project settings that we have a new little button here as well. I'm going to show you a couple of really quick little new additions to this as well. So here, this is showing you, because we have a lot more GPU accelerated options here, and we're leveraging the GPU a lot more inside of After Effects, that little rocket ship icon is going to show you that you're actually leveraging the GPU altogether, right? If we were in software only, you can see that it's disabled down here below, okay? So if we want to leverage GPU acceleration, again, in my case, I like to use metal, turn that on, the rocket shows as enabled. Again, we can always click and disable this here. Additionally, if we go into our effects and presets here, and we go into the flyout menu, and you can see that we have a new search for show GPU capable effects only. The reason for that now is that we have enough of them where it makes sense. So you can now see all of the various effects that are in fact GPU accelerated, and there are many, right? You can remember, I think it was about a year ago where we added, the first 9 or 10 or so. There's a lot of them in here now. So again, you've got that new option here to show only GPU capable effects. Really, really cool. Just lots of cool, again, new filtering there. It's just really great. And we have in total now, or I should say in this newest release, we have 9 new GPU accelerated effects. Okay, now just to again point out real quickly here, just to show you, we don't need to go through the whole thing, but you saw data-driven graphics before. So again, this just kind of showcases to you on the authoring side what this looks like in the After Effects environment. Here's your spreadsheet, which again you can actually access the data if you look down below Now, we showed this before in previous streams, but here's you can actually access all the various data in the spreadsheet here and drag values in if need be. You've also got your edit properties option here. So just an enormous amount of flexibility with working with those. Also worth pointing out, the new Lumetri color options. Again, not going to go into them here, but the same things that you have in Premiere. Naturally, you get all those new curves, all that loveliness is in After Effects as well. And you can see you can even have stackable ones here. So again, if we just twirl down curves, again, and we wanted to do a quick selection here, same thing, a little hue sat. We could do that. It selects our control points. Once again, look, I clicked on skin tone where, again, we're kind of at the edges there. Here's where our new sort of slider here, oh, sorry, I was having some little zoom issue there, is so useful. I'm going to hold down Shift to constrain the hue and just very quickly make a quick adjustment. Again, maybe I want to do something else here up in the sky. All right, something like that. Second control point. Enhance the sky. All right. So many new things. Oh, and lastly, want to point out here, and you'll see this in Premiere too, new home button here. All right, so new home button. Now I've already got a lot of projects launched up here, but you're going to see a new screen there altogether. Additionally, there's also a new Learn workspace. This is really targeted for beginners. So this is if you're trying to get started with After Effects, this is the way to do it. And you can see we've got these broken down into these different little overview lessons. If we kind of twirl these down, this will show you all the various lessons that are contained. So you've got things like create a composition, organize the comp, and these are fully interactive, by the way. So it's going to sort of step you through the process. Here, wait, let's go back here for. Oh, it was actually starting right there. You may have seen that. It's going to step you through the process, and you have actually things, operations to perform to begin learning how this all works. So, and you can even see one of the, now despite me having lots of tabs open here, it confines the interface when you enter this Learn mode to 3 panels: Project, Comp, and Comp Viewer, and your actual compositions down here. Simple, clean. You don't have all the tools and everything that get in the way, because if you're starting with After Effects, that can be pretty daunting. So we just make it really easy to kind of get in here and start learning, start working with After Effects. And you can continue on with those tutorials, and again, find even more of those tutorials via CC Learn. So those are just some of the latest innovations coming to After Effects: new depth mats, advanced puppet tool, new pins, advanced pins and bend pins, responsive design, time-based motion graphics templates, again, new additions to data-driven graphics, MOGRT workflows, and of course all of the new hue, sat, Luma curves available to you from Premiere, also in After Effects, including new GPU accelerated effects and new filtering for those effects in the Effects and Presets panel. All right, so back to the camera again. Now it is time to segue over to Audition. So let's go ahead and check out Audition. What you're going to see in Audition in this latest release, there's a lot of performance enhancements, UI improvements, and kind of continuing on from where we left off in the April NAB release. A lot of little functions here. Again, some of you have already seen these things. You're just going to notice some really cool things in the sort of tools panel down here below. Things like zoom to time, which give you options to just automatically zoom to a specific time duration. You can even have presets of different specific durations that you might want to zoom into when you're editing and cutting and such. Things like zoom out full, again, more intelligently now. Zoom out to all axes, and it shows you everything sort of uniformly on screen in the proper height and configuration. Also, gesturing inside the tracks for track height is just a lot smoother, you can even see. And you probably noticed, first and foremost, colors and the actual waveform displays, and even the edges of the tracks here with rounded corners, even the edges of the tracks. If we just right click here and choose track color, you're going to see a new track color panel for that. You still have customizable editable cues, but now your predefined colors more closely match, and again, the available ones here, you can customize them, the ones that you have in Premiere as well. So it's just brighter, more vibrant, just a newer, cleaner, more modern looking interface, and it's really, really awesome. So what we're going to do now in terms of additional features is I'm going to focus a little bit more on the denoise and DeReverbing that we saw just a short while ago inside of Premiere. So here in the effects rack, you can see that I actually have under noise reduction, we've got denoise and DeReverb. By the way, worth pointing out, there is the previous adaptive noise reduction that was used in Essential Sound. It's still there, again, still in the list here. Other uses for that, but here's the new denoiser and DeReverb that you're going to find in Essential Sound. And you can also add those just individually as effects inside of your clips here. So we just take a listen to this. Once again, I'm going to open this up, and we're going to go into the details in just a second. This is fairly extreme, but I'll turn it on while it's playing. You'll kind of get the idea of some of the crazy things this can do, and really the very nice results that it gives.
You're going to have to itch to fail.
Here we go.
And then start from scratch. If you're going to take advice, make sure you remember how to dance, because the beat of your own drum is all you got.
Now, as mentioned, having these frequency selections here, if you kind of take a listen to what it's doing, because you have that low-end rumble and high-end noise, this is trying to remove stuff from the mid. So that's probably not the most ideal. You actually probably want to focus on lower and higher frequencies here, which is going to give you a slightly smoother, slightly less artifacted result.
And you got to be okay with the cold and ready to strike when the iron's hot. You have to work between a rock and a smart place. Because if you're going to follow your dream, you got to go where it takes you. And that can be anywhere. But when you get there,
all right, you'll notice that you also have this cool option here to just hear the outputted noise itself. And you'll hear that there's some of the voice captured in there as well, but minimized again to restore something that would have been virtually unusable to basically usable. With a little EQ and treatment, we could make this a lot better.
You have to be okay with the cold.
This also lets you hear, if you want to really understand what each of these curves is doing, to hear sort of what it's removing in each of these ranges. So again, that's a fairly extreme example, but a really significantly cleaner noise reduction than we're used to before. Now, where this gets sort of really effective, though, is when you've got something that's maybe a little less accentuated in terms of noise, and you just want a nice, clean noise reduction. This is a good example. So let's take a quick listen to this. This is from a multi-channel file. Oh, and it's worth pointing out, this is something else that you would have seen in the previous release, source channel routing. So what's nice here is this came from this was a multi-channel recording, and you can see that the labels for each of the channels, so left and right, were the mix of the whole thing. Channel 3 was the boom mic, channel 4 was the lav mic, and channel 5 was the actual, that was the U87 that he's speaking on, the Neumann mic there. So we're going to work off of the stereo mix here. Excuse me. And take a quick listen.
You got to be okay with the cold and ready to strike when the iron's hot. You have to work between a rock and a smart place, because if you're gonna follow your dream.
Okay, so first thing is let's get rid of that little plosive. Now I've shown this a million times, but this just kind of plays into doing some quick repairs, even on multi-channel files here where I'm just affecting channels 1 and 2. Theoretically, I could turn on channel 5 and do the same.
Gonna follow you, 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 gonna.
All right, and if we go into effects, filter and EQ, FFT filter. Now, we have a preset that I made years ago called Kill the Mic Rumble. And if I apply this, wind back out and hit play.
Because if you're going to follow your dream,
it's flawless.
Because if you're going to follow,
All right, and let's redo that.
Because if you're going to follow your dream.
So nice, right? So really easy to remove things like plosives with that FFT filter and the Kill the Mic preset. But now, of course, we're dealing with the additional noise that's in there. So again, we can add it to the effects rack if we want to do it inside the waveform view non-destructively, or I can simply come up to Effects, Noise Reduction, and choose Denoise, and take a listen here and start playing around with this. And again, based on what we know, probably want to work on lower and higher frequencies, all right? Maybe if we start with broadband, this will kind of give you an idea of what it's doing. You got to listen carefully, but take a quick listen here.
The beat of your own drum is all you got in the end. You got to be okay with the cold and ready to strike when the iron's hot. You have to work between a rock and a smart place. Because if you're gonna follow your dream, you gotta go where it takes you.
And you notice I'm leaving a little bit of ambience in there because you're going to have some other elements playing here. You know, little room ambience is okay. It's just that constant loud hum that you don't need. But notice I'm only at 24%. Compared to our previous noise reduction, you'd probably have to be in upwards of 70 to 80 to really hear it killing everything and potentially hear a lot of artifacts. But I want to get rid of some of that room ambience as well. So again, here's where that DeReverb comes into play. This is really, it is kind of in the mid frequencies, also around some of the higher frequencies. So we can dial this back, always start at 0, start playback.
Even if no one's coming, you're gonna have to itch to fail, and then start from scratch. If you're gonna take advice, make sure you remember how to dance.
Notice, by the way, it's doing an auto gain adjustment for me there. So as I was increasing,
because the beat of your own drum is all you got in the end,
the amount of DeReverb, it was accounting for some of the loss in amplitude by doing that. Obviously, it's having to gate and remove a lot of frequency content there. So this is kind of assisting you along the way. Just a super powerful tool. Again, it's not going to solve and save everything. There are some situations that, frankly, it's just not really going to help very much at all. But you absolutely have to check it out and try it. It is quite awesome. And the new noise reduction is just really, really lovely. Lastly here, just to kind of showcase to you again some of the new UI. This is the full project from Silver Salts, and this is just to kind of show you just how it all looks. By the way, you can even see like the little colored icons here with the new sort of colored squares around each of the track names. It just looks so much nicer and so much prettier. So lots of really great things, really based around performance and UI and some cool Sensei technologies in the latest edition coming to Audition. And last but not least, let's showcase a couple of the cool things that we are now bringing to Character Animator. So just real quickly, going to reset my screen here, and let's bounce over to Character Animator. All right, so here we are inside of Character Animator, and the first thing we're going to talk about is something that was actually sneaked last year at MAX, which was called Project Puppetron, which was actually working only on stills. Now it's something that we're bringing into Character Animator called Characterizer, and this is effectively the ability for you from within Character Animator to instantly create and animate unique stylized puppets using your webcam and some kind of reference artwork. It's powered by Adobe Sensei machine learning, and it uses a revolutionary AI technology to basically create a puppet of you in a matter of seconds. So let's go ahead and open this up. You can see I made a couple of them here before. Let's go ahead and create a new capture. I'm actually going to show you what the process here is like. Now, I'm going to put my hair down because it sometimes does some weird things with hair, but I'm trying to challenge it today. I had to lower my chair a bit. And I'm actually going to show you now what the process is and how this all works. So you can see I'm just using my webcam here. Let's go ahead and start the capture and check this out and watch how this works.
Look at the camera lens and make a neutral expression in 3, 2, 1. Close your eyes in 3, 2, 1. Open your eyes and smile in 3, 2, 1. Frown in 3, 2, 1. Make a surprised expression in 3, 2, 1. Repeat after me. Adobe.
Adobe.
Photoshop.
Photoshop.
Lightroom.
Lightroom. Woohoo! All right, so what you can now see is that it's created all of the facial expressions, and through those series of words, it's created all the visemes, all those mouth sounds automatically just based on those few selections. Let's go ahead and continue through this. So here's where this gets really crazy. By the way, so you can see, by the way, you can import PNGs or JPEGs here. If you've already got yourself cut out, that's probably better. I tried a few with my hair back and it worked even better. But the idea here is that now you can take one of these prepared styles or bring in your own and automatically characterize yourself in the style of that puppet. So, for instance, this stone sculpture here, I can now sort of characterize myself. Now, if I minimize the stylization, you can see you've got a couple of different sliders here. As I go more to the left, it'll start looking more and more like me. And as I go more to the right, it's going to sort of morph my appearance more with the original look of this character. It's done a very nice job with the hair right there. Similarly, with feature exaggeration, if we go sort of negative here, it's going to widen and sort of flatten out my face a bit. It can get pretty creepy looking pretty fast here. And if we go more to the right, it'll sort of narrow it out a bit. Somewhere probably right in the middle is where you want to be. Now this also does a couple of other cool things at the cost at this stage of slightly more time to actually render out the puppet for you. But we have these things called cycles here, which I kind of reference this as, if you remember a show called Dr. Katz years ago, and they had something called squiggle vision. Well, this is kind of like squiggle vision, right? Where the puppet is sort of constantly moving or in motion, even when you're not talking, whatever. So just kind of to give it that slightly more organic, realistic, strange sort of look. And then again, we can continue to click on different styles. So even after we've made these settings, here's what I'd look like in this particular artist rendering. That's actually kind of nice. Maybe something that's just straight pencil illustration. Let's take a look at that. Okay. Interesting there. Look at what it did with the hair. So again, if we stylize this back, you know, taking a look at something like this, you can see that's definitely more me versus it starts to really morph together with that character down there. We've got some really interesting ones here. All of these will ship inside here. Let's go with something like this. This is kind of crazy. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool. Now, one of the things I want to show you here is how you can add your own styles. Now, you can actually see in here how I've already added, I just took a photograph of the dollar bill and used that kind of as the basis for characterizing myself in the look and feel of George Washington. But you can create your own from any sort of image. And just to kind of show you, let's go into Create New Style. I'm going to go here, and this is actually the image of that dollar bill. And what's really cool is there's a couple steps here. So the first is you're going to basically drag the dots to line up with the image. So you can see it's already kind of identified the eyes. You can kind of move these things around as need be. All right. Modify them. It usually does a pretty amazing job of kind of getting everything kind of exactly where you want it to be. But you can see it was actually using the hair there, so it didn't know what to do with that. Again, this is off of just a JPEG off my phone, so let's kind of reset that. Eyebrows look pretty good here. Maybe accentuate those a little. We could probably even widen the face on this side. I'm not going to worry about that for right now. Then you go into this screen, and the key here is you need to identify and paint over the sections that represent face, hair, neck, and clothing. So you can adjust your brush size here. All right, so right now we're looking at the face, all areas that should be the face. Well, in fact, this whole thing is his face, right? So you can see I'm painting over it here, and you're actually getting a nice preview when you let go on the side over there to kind of represent the face. Now I'm going to count the sideburns in with the face. All right. Notice, by the way, face separate from neck. So now I could go to something like hair. All right. And I would come in here and basically paint in where his hair lives. All of this just going to ensure that your puppet kind of works better with your capture, right? And then once you've done all this and you've gone through, again, the purple background is representing the background. So we'd come down here, we'd add in the neck. You know, first I just outline it and then do whatever, you get the idea, and so on and so forth. And when you're done with all of that, then effectively what it will do is it will create this puppet for you, which you can then very easily and quickly stylize against yourself. So when you find one that you like, all right, so maybe let's take this one, for example. Now we're simply going to click on Generate Puppet. And when you do that, it's automatically going to take all of those images based on all of the expressions, and it's going to leverage the visemes that it created based off of your speech that you inputted earlier, and you're going to have an animated talking head puppet of yourself via one of these character styles, truly in a matter of minutes. Let's go into the actual scene here, all right, and I'll turn on my camera. And I'll set my rest pose. Right? And now you can see I've got myself animated and characterized, just like that. All right, no head turns on this particular puppet, but the rest of it is just kind of doing its thing. And again, we're using the face tracking right here. So same face tracker that we have in After Effects. Really cool, really accurate, just using the onboard microphone here on this particular computer. All right, so let's now go into another new feature, new element of Character Animator. We've just got a couple more minutes here. Something called replays. And effectively, replays are reusable, triggerable recordings of your puppets. You can create a library, basically, of movements, excuse me, and add them together to build more complex movements. So over here in the Properties panel, you're going to see if I twirl down replays, and here I can turn this off. You don't need to see my face in there. Actually, I'll have Nia keep talking and following my voice here. You can see that we've got a whole series of replays. So if I go ahead and click on this first one here, L34 shimmy, okay, kind of shows you what that looks like. Here, let's see, we've got front shimmy. All right, so these are some dance moves that that the illustrator created for us. And what we can do is not only can we assign triggers to them. You've seen how we can add triggers in the past, but this is also going to allow us to basically stack multiple replays together to create like an animated series of moves. So if your character is going to be reusing certain, for instance, like dance moves or something like that, or particular moves in a scene, you can pre-record them and then stack them together and then assign them to a keyboard trigger and automatically engage them as you're recording into the scene in the timeline. So let's start by, let's see, why don't we go ahead, maybe we'll do the, should we do the left hand raise one? All right, that one right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and take left hand raise, and I'm gonna come over here to the triggers panel. Let's try and place this towards the bottom. That's right, we'll stick it right under R3-4 shimmy. All right, and left hand raise. So the first thing I'm gonna do after I drag that in is I'm going to assign a letter to this to be the trigger, which is going to be the letter P. Now I want to have multiple moves in here, and you can see right here it shows me that right now it's replaying only the left hand raise, but I want to have a couple of different moves in there. So I'm going to take a few more of these here. Let's take the right hand raise. All right, you can kind of see where I'm going with this. I'm going to drop it on top of left hand raise, and note down here now it shows that we have those two animations happening. Let's take waist left. All right. Coming in a little bit delayed, but that's okay. And maybe we'll do head right. All right, place that there. Okay, and now when we hit shortcut key P, she performs those moves. All right, super cool. So you can imagine how replays can really sort of help you augment a scene and really build up the process for some really impressive animations with your characters here in Character Animator. All right, last thing I'm going to show you today before we wrap it up is yet another new feature called magnets. And this is going to, effectively, it creates magnetic objects that are connected to each other as they get closer. So you can use it for picking up and dropping objects, like in this case, we've got our headphones here, which we can kind of pick up and move around. And of course, there's physics attached to this, so when we drop it, they'll just, well, that was, I don't know why that didn't bounce. It's still in beta. It's not quite ready yet. Let's go ahead and just reset that to its original position. But what we have here are a series of triggers that are going to allow us to do some pretty cool things. So via the magnets, and let me go ahead and let me twirl up replays and twirl this down. At the bottom here, you'll see we have magnets assigned to the headphones. And by the way, if we just go into the actual character herself, here we go, Ruby. Okay, inside the puppet panel with our properties panel here, you can see that on the headphones layer, if we come down to the physics section, you can see that magnet has been applied. So again, this new feature in this latest version, let's go back to our scene. And in our magnets here, oh, sorry, wrong one. Let's go back to Ruby over here. If we simply hit the B key, here it comes, preparing the scene. What you'll see is via the magnets and based on the magnet strength and range, we can get Ruby to pick up the headphones and they'll automatically, it simulates as if she's grabbing them. We also have a couple of triggers here. If we look inside the trigger menu, I believe we have one where she grabs the headphones. I think it's shortcut Q. Oh, there you go. So she picks up the headphones with her right arm. All right. If we hit shortcut key K, dancing with them there. All right. Oh, they're getting away from us now. We also have just dropping the headphones here. All right. Physics is doing its own series of things right now. Put it back into its default state. Here we go. All right, here let's hit shortcut key K again. All right, she kind of does her dance. All right, and we can get her to pick those up as mentioned before. All right, oh, this is just right arm. Oh, and twirling up the headphones. Oh, and they're magnetized all over the place. In any case, you get the idea. So with magnets, it's just a new way to kind of augment your puppets and allow you to create some even cooler, newer types of animation right inside of Character Animator. That in conjunction with replays and Characterizer make for a really super cool and super dynamic release of the next version of Character Animator available in CC. So my friends, that is it for me, for us, for today. Again, you'll be able to watch the replays. Oh, and I'm so low right now. You'll be able to watch the replays right here on Facebook and later in the day on YouTube. So thank you so much for joining me. Again, if you're going to be in Amsterdam, hope that I'll see you at the IBC convention. And if not, until next time right here on the stream, have a good rest of your day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.